Hey everybody! Welcome to our last week of DigPins, our scholarship week. The scholarship week is always a good one for DigPins, but it is our last week, so it's a little bit sad because things are winding down. We're gonna structure this video just like we did all the others, where usually we kind of go around and say a little something about the week. This time we're gonna actually do a little bit of a reflection on DigPins as a whole, and then one of us will give this week it's Joe. Joe's gonna give us a rundown of the scholarship week and the readings and activities that we have for you. So this has just been a great run of DigPins for me, really a very unique one. I've never done DigPins in a pandemic before, but now I can say that I have done that. It's always a little bit different every time that I run it. I think this is like maybe my 5th or 6th time running it. And of course running it with new faculty, but also, new institutions was super exciting for me. So I'm super pleased with being able to network and meet everyone, and just really excited that, we all got to do a little community learning together. I'll go ahead and pass things over to Joe.
Yeah, it's, this is always a little bit of a bittersweet week as we wrap things up. I would say for me, the best part of all of DigPins is always seeing other people talk. It's the conversations that happen in the blog comments and over on Slack and in Twitter, and some of the interactions we have in these live calls that honestly, as teachers, a lot of you will recognize this feeling. It's the "they're doing it" moment. And even when I don't inject myself into those conversations, I see them, and it always is the part that makes it worthwhile. So thank you for sharing that with me. And a lot of us will keep these presences going. So we look forward to the other fun part of DigPins is when some DigPins participant hits me up on Twitter, 4 months later. And I get to say, oh, that stuck. So I hope I'll see you around in future. And Taylor?
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I think one of my favorite things that's been new for this iteration of DigPins has been having this conversation in the Slack across schools. We haven't done that before. Usually the Slack conversations are just individually in cohorts. But to me, that has brought another mode of communication that really makes DigPins feel like its own network in a way that is, I think, enhanced the whole thing. So that's been really cool to see that conversation kind of happening, drawn out over time, but in small bits. So like, as opposed to in a blog post where you've got this longer blog post and maybe a paragraph or something as a comment, I love to see the things in Slack, like people reacting to things with even like emoji, like just simple things. That's been really cool to see, and has brought a unique and I think valuable side to DigPins. So, Meha, what do you think?
So it's my first time facilitating DigPins, and I've been watching from afar for years now. So I'm really excited that I got a chance to contribute with my own cohort. And it's been interesting seeing my own cohort grow and be able to become more open, even though this was not something a lot of them were used to. But I think maybe one of the things I'm happiest about was the opportunity to use liberating structures in the synchronous sessions. Knowing how many we have signed up for this cohort across the different universities, it would have been really hard to hold intimate conversations with like 30 or 40 people. And so I was really happy to see that people who are complete strangers from different contexts found these useful. That's the feedback we're getting from all of you. And so hopefully you're seeing a way that's helping you connect with people at a time where social connection is difficult, and also hopefully thinking about how you might use them in your own classes. So that's one of the things that I'm really happy about. Christine?
So I'm the other new facilitator in DigPins. And what I have loved most about this experience is I have never met any of the people in DigPins in real life besides my own cohort. And I have just felt that this experience has made me feel part of a community around our shared interests of digital pedagogy, digital identity, networks, and scholarship. So I just have loved that DigPins has been set up in a way to build this sense of community. And I myself have just felt, I have found connection with total strangers across the world. And I'm getting sappy here, everybody, but it just has felt really nice that, or to see that these digital tools and digital community, how it's been structured and facilitated. And it has provided a really helpful model for me to bring to my work with other faculty members here at Colgate. DigPins has given me faith that you can still facilitate meaningful learning opportunities and connection in digital spaces. So that's what I have loved the most about DigPins. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Joe.
Great. So I get to, and thank you, Christine. We all need to lean into our inner sap. So I get to kind of run down the week. We've got some terrific readings on tap, and what we want to do is introduce a tool which is really useful for keeping track of the scholarship and the reading broadly that you're doing online. It's called Hypothesis, and it's in a genre of tool called social annotation tools. It kind of does what it says on the tin. It allows you to look at almost any web page and highlight text that you want to remember, and you can make annotations with it. You can add tags to it. You can do this privately or in small groups or out in the open, which is what I'm going to show you if I remember to hit share screen. There it is. So this is what I see when I log into Hypothesis, and it's just at hypothesis.is, and it logs me in. You can see I've been using this pretty actively for a while, and I can see the different things that I have highlighted recently. Obviously, I haven't been very active in 2020. You can see kind of the tags that I've used and the different topics that I think that these passages are about. And then if I click on one of these, it displays almost like a little note card where I've got the particular part of the article that I was making a quote on and the things that I proceeded to say about it. I've got what tags I added to it. And I can even, pull up some of these tags and start seeing, okay, so what have I talked about that was about writing? And I can start pulling those together. And actually up here in the search box, if I take my name out of it, I can see what anybody on Hypothesis has written about and tagged about writing. So I can see what threads other people are doing as well. There are a couple of ways into Hypothesis, and we will give you a proper technological, the tech help video on the blog post. But fundamentally, if you, I should probably not mess with somebody else's. Well, okay, I can do this one. What I find most useful, there is a way to do this through changing the URL. I find it most useful to have either the, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble navigating. I find that I can use a bookmarklet, or Chrome has a plugin which allows me to highlight text. I get a little pop-up and I can write my, well, I need to log in. But I can highlight text once I've activated the plugin. And it looks exactly like what you've just seen. I've got a little box to write my own thing in. I can choose whether it's a private or a public option. If I were in any groups, I would see that there, and there's my tag button. So what we're going to ask you to do this week is to create a Hypothesis account. And we'd like you to start with the readings that we've got. Actually, the other thing that I didn't show you is that you can respond to other people's annotations. So we want you to start with the readings that we've got, and try to make some annotations. We'll try to give some guidance, but it's a combination of, your reactions, links to other, you can include links, so links to other similar work, or if someone makes a reference and you can kind of provide the footnote, that can be useful. If you're aware of it being expanded on somewhere else, you can do that. Carry on the conversation. If you use the DigPins tag, it'll be a little easier to see each other, especially if you start, if you agree with me that this is a really useful tool. This has done more to improve my reading of online sources than anything else I use. It's a tool that really excites me because it makes me read more intentionally. And we hope that you will start with those readings that we're doing together. Use the DigPins hashtag, so it's relatively easier for us to find your annotations when we're, as you add other sources. And respond to each other. When people have, feel free to ask comments. Does this mean, is this relevant to, so that we can have a little bit of a conversation in the marginalia of these texts. I know we've got some other Hypothesis users on the call. I know Maha's got a really intentional way that she uses it. Can I?
Yeah, so I'll talk real quick. I know Christine and Taylor also have stories. I'll say two very quick things. So the first one is that I find it really helpful for myself, just as an author or scholar, if I'm reading across different articles and annotating them, and I tag them, and then when I go back to write my own blog post or article, I can use all those different annotations with a particular tag when I'm writing a literature review or I'm trying to find stuff. And I think even for undergrads, it's going to help them avoid plagiarism, because it's going to show which part is the text of the original article and which part is your annotation. You know how you sometimes copy paste and you forget, or pretend or really forget, but it could happen that you truly forget. And I think it helps with that. The other thing, this is not a scholarship thing, but it's a educational thing, is when people ask me, what can I do other than online discussions, because students are bored of online discussions, I say, if you're discussing a text, they could just annotate the text. It feels like less work for them. It's actually less work for you. It's great, but they're actually engaging with specific things, and it's sometimes easier for them to have those conversations on the margins, whether you leave it open to them to annotate however they like, or you give them particular prompts. It's a nice place for them, and to make sort of their reading process transparent to each other and to you. So you can see which things catch their attention or they have questions about. So I think it helps promote more thoughtful reading as well. Christine, you have lots of stories.
I do. But what I wanted to share about Hypothesis, what I love the most about the tool is it makes, and again, I've used Hypothesis myself. My personal practice is very similar to Joe and Maha's around using annotation as a tool to help me track my thoughts as I'm reading these texts online. But what I've loved about observing the use of Hypothesis in courses is it helps make students' thinking visible. Like when you're in a class and everyone has read the hard copies of the text, I can't see what other people wrote in the margins of the book or what they highlighted. So I like Hypothesis is just with annotating in communities of courses, or like on DigPins, like we're going to do next week. I love being able to see the insights that other people have when they're reading the text, because often they're very different than my own. So I just really like Maha said, it makes other people's thoughts visible and transparent, and I just get so many more insights about a text when I can see what other people are thinking. I'll pass it on to Taylor.
Yeah, and having that visibility it lends to some really interesting uses that I've seen. So I've seen classes use this across the course to collect resources that then get so basically one of the uses I help facilitate at St. Norbert is they will use these on a couple different common articles, and then students break into groups and are responsible for finding other things to annotate. And then the next year they do the same thing, so this library of stuff grows over time. And so there's some really kind of cool use cases of tagging in that case. And it's kind of creating an OER over time, which is kind of cool. There aren't a lot of tools that can do that as simply as Hypothesis. You really just need an account and 10 minutes to play around with it. get started. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just say that this year we have decided to put the hypothesis activity in the scholarship week, but in past years we have put it in the pedagogy week, and there's a lot of good documentation about different techniques, about how to, different pedagogical techniques of how to teach with hypothesis. So we have it in scholarship this week, but it is definitely a teaching tool, and it can be a very powerful learning experience for students. So that's it, you guys. Wow, this is the end. I want to thank everybody for participating and reiterate that we would love to see you in the open spaces. The DigPen Slack is not going to go anywhere. If you want to continue to ask questions or talk there, I'm sure we're all going to be still having that kind of running in the background. We're not going to create any more content after this point. Somebody asked me in the beginning, they were like, when does this end? And I was like, well, our last week is going to be the scholarship week. That starts, it starts here. So we're not going to be putting out any more content or any more prompts or readings or anything like that. But please don't think that that means that you can't still reach out to us or connect to us on Twitter or Slack or whatever. It's been a great run of DigPens in a very uncertain time. And I just want to thank everyone. It looks like Meha wants to say something real quick as we part.
Just to say that just because the content that's coming from us is ending doesn't mean that we can't suggest stuff. So if you hear about an event that's coming up that you think might be of interest to folks, there's already one that I'm co-organizing about inclusive citation the week after DigPens is over, and I'm going to invite folks to join that. So what comes next can come from you. It doesn't have to come from us, and hopefully you've made some connections here that you can maintain, whether offline or privately or publicly.
I love it so much. Really good stuff. Well, thank you, everyone. And yeah, we'll see you in the online spaces. Bye.
Bye.